Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Falmouth. I am Robert Foose, a member of the Falmouth Veterans Council, and I will be your Master of Ceremony for today's Memorial Day observance. On behalf of the town of Falmouth, I welcome you and thank you for being a part of today's special ceremony and spending a portion of your holiday weekend with us. Unlike Veterans Day, which celebrates all men and women who have served in the United States Armed Forces, Memorial Day remembers and honors those who gave the ultimate sacrifice in service to their country. This Memorial Day is particularly poignant as we celebrate the 75th anniversary of the end of the Second World War. Our format is slightly different this year. Instead of gathering hundreds at Memorial Lane in front of the library, we are following state and federal social distancing guidelines in the midst of this pandemic and are doing our best to preserve as much of the tradition that makes this event so special and the Falmouth Memorial Day observance the premier ceremony on the Cape. Thank you for tuning in and joining us. And now the combined Falmouth School Band will perform our national anthem.
Honor guards, present, march!
I'd like to welcome siblings and Falmouth Scouts Harley Smith of Troop 42 and Melody Smith of Troop 137 to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, guys. Thank you, Harley and Melody. Now, Reverend Nell Fields from Requoit Congregational Church will deliver the invocation.
Let us pray. God of many names, gather us together wherever we are, whoever we are. Gather us together from our fear and uncertainty. Gather us on this day so that we may pause to remember and give thanks for those who have given their lives in the service of our country. Never let us forget those who sacrificed to ensure that freedom would be our legacy. Though their names may fade with the passing of generations, may we never forget what they have done. God of many names, gather us together this day. Draw us closer to one another in heart and spirit and in hope. May we be inspired by what we see and hear so that we too may continue to respond to the call to serve one another. We ask you this in the name of all that is holy. Amen.
Thank you, Reverend Fields. Now, to read Governor Baker's Memorial Day proclamation, I invite Emma Collette, daughter of Veterans Council member Randy Collette, to the podium.
A proclamation. Whereas, while the nation was still recovering from the horrors of the Civil War, people in cities and towns across the country gathered to honor those Union and Confederate soldiers who had given their lives, celebrating the first Decoration Day. And whereas, after World War I, the nation came together again to honor those who had fallen in the service of their country, renamed Memorial Day. The last Monday in May is when people remember and honor the memory of all the men and women who fought and died in all American wars and conflicts. And whereas, throughout our country's history, thousands of Massachusetts citizens have fought in wars and conflicts to defend our safety and way of life. And whereas, their legacy of patriotism and dedication to country is an inspiration to all Americans. And whereas, it is appropriate that all Massachusetts citizens remember the bravery of those who gave their lives, so that their sacrifices serve as a reminder of the cost of our freedom. Now, therefore, I, Charles D. Baker, Governor of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, do hereby proclaim May 25th, 2020 to be Memorial Day.
Thank you, Emma. I'm pleased to introduce the Greater Falmouth Community Chorus, who will perform the Navy Hymn.
morning, I never thought 70 years ago, when I enlisted, that I would face the smallest group, but the most dedicated. And for the last 35 years, I've stood at this podium and watched the thousands of spectators that I hope will be aware that we never forget those who serve and those that have served for the country, the United States of America. I didn't know exactly what I was supposed to say this morning, so thanks to my new commander, I'd like to read off a little part of this ceremony, and it begins with the men and women from Falmouth who have fought in each of the nation's wars. For those that have walked the cemeteries around town, scouts, volunteers have ensured American flags are proudly waving from the tombstones of those who have fought in each conflict. From the most current wars in Iraq, Afghanistan, all the way back to the Revolutionary War, my small part was 48 to 52, and combat missions in the Far East. And I'm proud that in those 75 anniversary years, the end of World War II and conflict in which over 400,000 Americans lost their lives, we recognize the efforts and sacrifice of the greatest generation to not only maintain our rights and freedoms as Americans, but establish the world order as we know it today. As a veteran of the U.S. Navy, we have a saying in the seagoing services: those who are no longer in the ranks of living and have crossed the bar, referencing Lord Alfred Tennyson's poem of the same name, Crossing the Bar. Sunset and evening star, and one clear call for me, and what may there be no moaning of the bar when I put out to sea. I don't know how much longer this is. Am I finished yet? This is my boss. He's bigger than I am.
No, you'll continue down here.
Okay. He says I got more to do.
Pick up the mic,
But
David.
much a tide as moving seems to sleep, too full for sound and foam. When that which drew from out the boundless deep turns again home. Twilight and evening bell, and after that the dark, and may there be no sadness of farewell when I embark. For though from out of our bourne of time and place the flood may bear me far, I hope to see my pilot face to face when I have crossed the bar. Paula Smith will now honor Falmouth's fallen heroes that have crossed the bar over the years. I turn you to Paula Smith. Paula Smith, thank you.
Edward F. Ackerman, Air Force. Arthur G. Aldrich, Jr., Navy. Julius Averna, Navy. Stella Banner, Air Force. Anthony R. Basilio, Coast Guard. Robert P. Benoit, Air Force. James P. Berggren, Army. Richard S. Blake, Army. Bruno F. Bick, Air Force. Kendall B. Bohr, Navy. Richard A.J. Boudreau, Army. Claire M. Boyer, Marines. Robert G. Brown, Navy. E. John Bugby, Army. Eugene W. Carlson, Navy. Frank Charlney, Air Force. George W. Chase, Marines. James Cleary, Army. George W. Crocker, Navy. Walter M. Crotty Jr., Army. Kenneth M. Cunha, Air Force. Warren E. Dalton Jr., Coast Guard. Nathan D. Dondas, Navy. Joseph A. Downs, Air Force. Robert J. Duffany, Navy. Petros C. Economopoulos, Army. Frank Egloff, Air Force. Nathan S. Ellis III, Marines. Edward P. Farron, Army. William A. Fontes, Army. Bernard Ford, Air Force. Thomas B. Frazier Jr., Army. Daniel H. Frontfelter, Navy. Daniel C. Fry, Army. Daniel A. Gabori, Air Force. John S. Georgopoulos, Army. Stuart E. Gordon Jr., Navy. David P. Grigas, Army. Chester Harris Jr., Army. Alan C. Henry, Navy. John Haywood, Marines. George H. Holmes, Navy. Robert S. Hurt, Army. Stephen D. Kennedy, Navy. Thomas J. Kirby Jr., Marines. Walter R. Crowan, Marines. Anthony LaFosse, Army. William Lyons, Army. Daniel P. McDonald, Navy. John V. Machardo, Army. Leonard A. Marks, Army. Robert J. McAdams, Army. James B. McDonald, Navy. Charles E. McGowan, Navy. Richard E. McVeigh, Army. John T. McVeigh, Army. Arnold W. Miner, Navy. Avelino R. Miranda, Sr., Army. Edward J. Misbach, Navy. Morris F. Monette, Air Force. Richard R. Mongo, Army. Richard R. Monco, Army. Christopher B. Morrison, Navy. General James A. Munson, Army. Richard D. Murphy, Jr., Marines. Thomas J. Norton, Marines. Michael J. O'Brien, Army. John F. O'Callaghan, Army. H. Robert O'Connell, Navy. Leo P. O'Keefe, Army. Edward J. Ollier, Army. Richard O. Perrin, Army. Donald Carey, Army. Henry J. Peters Sr., Merchant Marines. Ted R. Poretti, Navy. Robert A. Pendergrast, Army. John Dennis Quinn, Army. Philip L. Renzetti, Army. Robert V. Rice, Army. Joseph E. Rizzo, Navy. Eileen Rosa, Navy. Roy R. Rose Sr., Air Force. Edward A. Sands, Army. Robert A. Shar, Navy. Rudolph S. Sheltema, Army. Herbert S. Shahzade, Army. Charles H. Springer, Army. Norman M. Starosta, Navy. Donald R. Stewart, Navy. James J. Shagru, Navy. Christopher E. Sweeting Sr., Marines. B. Robert Talanini, Navy. Rodney O. Thrasher, Navy. Noah T. Totten, Army.
Thank you, Paula. It is my distinct honor to introduce today's keynote speaker, Captain Christian Glander, the Sector Commander of Sector Southeastern New England in Woods Hole. Captain Glander assumed command in July 2018 and directs all Coast Guard missions across Rhode Island, Southeast Massachusetts, Cape Cod, and the islands of Martha's Vineyard, Nantucket, and Block Island, an area spanning more than 1,200 miles of coastline and 3,000 nautical miles of water. He is a permanent cutterman with over 12 years of seagoing service, including afloat tours as First Lieutenant aboard the Coast Guard Cutter Forward, Operations Officer aboard Coast Guard Cutter Spencer, Executive Officer of Coast Guard Cutter Bark Eagle, and Commanding Officer of Cutters Escanaba, Tybee, Monomoy, and Point Sal. Captain Glander has conducted migrant interdiction, search and rescue, homeland security, drug operations, and national defense missions from the Galapagos Islands to the Mediterranean. Captain Glander's assignments ashore include a tour as the Officer Personnel Management Division Chief, where he was responsible for the personnel management decisions for 8,000 commissioned officers. He also served as the budget coordinator at the Office of Budget and Programs, where he coordinated the formulation and defense of the Coast Guard's $9 billion annual budget request to the Department of Homeland Security. Captain Glander holds a Bachelor of Science degree in Mathematics and Computer Science from the Coast Guard Academy, a Master's of Public Administration from Harvard University, and a Master's of Business Administration from the Massachusetts Institute of Technology. Originally from Mattituck, New York, he received his commission in 1993 after graduating from the Coast Guard Academy, and he and his wife Angela have 2 sons. Please welcome Captain Chris Glander.
Good afternoon. This Memorial Day, remember the sacrifices the men and women of the United States Army, Navy, Marine Corps, Air Force, and Coast Guard who answered the call to service. Today, we pay solemn tribute to these servicemen and women who paid the ultimate sacrifice. While we often think of Memorial Day as a national holiday on the last Monday in May, its origins actually date back to the 1860s and the years immediately following the Civil War. Originally declared Decoration Day, this holiday was intended to remember and honor those who fought to preserve the United States of America. In a display of unity, then Congressman and retired General James Garfield spoke at the first official Decorations Day ceremony, which was held in Arlington Ceremony with 5,000 participants who then placed flowers on the graves of over 20,000 Union and Confederate soldiers. I'm here today talking to you from Sector Southeastern New England in beautiful Woods Hole, Massachusetts, aboard the Coast Guard Cutter Cobia. This is certainly appropriate given the rich history of the service Cape Cod and the islands have through each of the nation's wars and conflicts. A spirit of service to a common goal that helps sustain the communities here for nearly 400 years. This year marks the 75th anniversary of the end of World War II. We remember the over 400,000 United States service members who gave their lives in service to their country. We also acknowledge the vital role played by the Cape Cod community during this campaign. In the 1940s, Camp Edwards, right here in Cape Cod, was home to a wide variety of missions critical to protecting the homeland and training soldiers destined for overseas combat. Camp Edwards was home to anti-submarine and anti-aircraft units, and as well as the largest military rehabilitation hospital at that time. The seaborne portion of the Operation Overlord, instrumental to the Allied victory in Europe, had its roots on Camp Edwards. Before landing on the beaches of Normandy, amphibious units trained on Cape Cod and Martha's Vineyard, units would practice maneuvering for landing on the beaches, scaling the Gay Head Cliffs, and honing their targeting skills by bombing No Man's Island, which is only a few miles south of here. Many of who trained in the area, unfortunately, did not make it back. Their selfless actions of over 6,000 Americans lost that day in 1944 are credited to launching the beginning of the end of World War II. As President Truman stated at the conclusion of the war, our debt to the heroic men and women in valiant service to their country can never be repaid. They have earned our undying gratitude. America will never forget their sacrifices. 3 decades later, Congress passed the National Cemeteries Act, enacting a national cemetery be built within 10 standard federal regions. It was determined that the largest veteran population in the Northeast was centered in the greater Boston area. Approximately 750 acres of land at Otis Air Force was transferred to the VA's National Cemetery System. In 1976, the site of the Massachusetts National Cemetery became the first piece of land acquired to specifically build a new national cemetery, the first since 1949. On a personal note, I've had the privilege to spend a lot of my Coast Guard career patrolling the waters off the Cape and the islands. This is a unique and special place, and I could not feel more blessed to be part of this community. In closing, while Memorial Day has traditionally honored our fallen military service members, in these challenging times, I would be remiss not to recognize the essential workers in the healthcare system and the many other critical industries currently risking their health and security for our country. The Coast Guard salutes all our healthcare workers and our fellow first responders who continue to go above and beyond the call of duty every day. Thank you for the service. Thank you for saving American lives. God bless. Semper Paratus.
Thank you, Captain Glander. Here is the combined Falmouth School Band performing America the Beautiful. Thank you. In the military, a roll call is the reading aloud of the names on the muster roll, and their responses determine who is present or accounted for. Today, we will conduct a roll call for those veterans laid to rest here on Memorial Lane in front of the Falmouth Library who gave their lives in service to their country. Please welcome back Paula Smith.
Sergeant Matthew Gallagher, Army. From Vietnam, Corporal Langdon G. Burwell, Marines. Specialist Arthur F. Hennessy, Jr., Army. PFC John B. Burgess, Army. Corporal Bernard E. St. John, Marines. Lieutenant Edward T. Mello, Jr., Army. Lieutenant Anthony E. Kupka, Marines. From World War II, William McComiskey, Navy. Staff Sergeant Charles A. Norris, Air Force. PFC Clarence Milanese, Army. PFC Ernest G. Barrows, Army. Corporal Leonard J. Fonesca, Air Force. Private Joseph R. Eusebio, Jr., Army. Lieutenant Alfred James, Air Force. Chester Weeks, Navy. Staff Sergeant Joseph W. Spooner, Army. Lieutenant Stephen R. Papp, Army. Private Leonard Almeida, Marines. Lieutenant Robert Larkin, Air Force. Airman Frank M. Cardoza, Navy Air Corps. From Korea, Lieutenant George W. Toe, Army. PFC James E. Nickerson, Marines. PFC Alexander Booker, Army. And World War I, William Martin. William W. Wood. Charles DeWillis. William Savage. Paul H. Sherman, Jr.
Thank you, Paula. The Brian Boru Pipe Band will now perform Amazing Grace. Thank you. Taps is played on military bases at dusk, during flag ceremonies, and at military funerals. Taps will now be performed by bugler Jay Swain, followed by the benediction from Reverend Fields.
Friends, let us gather our hearts in prayer. Spirit of life, whom we have called by many names, you have gathered us in. Now send us out. Send us out in thanksgiving for all who have given their lives in the service of our country. Send us out honoring their memory by caring for the family members they have left behind. Send us out ensuring that their wounded comrades are properly cared for, and by being watchful caretakers of the freedom for which they gave their lives. Send us out with respect and love for one another, and send us out in sure hope that together we can build a peaceful and safe future for all. We ask you this in the name of all that is holy. Amen. God bless you, and God bless the United States of America.
Thank you, Reverend Fields. In closing, we have many to thank for making today's ceremony possible. First and foremost, none of this would be possible without the tireless efforts of FCTV. They recorded, edited, and made this magic happen. Thank you. I would also like to thank the Department of Public Works, DPW, for doing an amazing job with all of the fields work and the grounds. They are always amazing. I would also like to thank our performers, live and recorded. Thank you to the combined Falmouth School Band and Greater Falmouth Community Chorus. We wish you could have been here with us live today. You're an integral part of the rich musical tradition involved in each Falmouth Memorial Day and Veterans Day ceremony. And thank you to the Brian Baru Pipe Band and also for Jay Swain for your moving performances. Thank you to Val's Floral Design Studio for donating the flowers on Memorial Lane. Thank you to the participants today for making this unique ceremony special, and particularly for your flexibility to make it happen. Of course, this is all made possible through the amazing Veteran Services staff we have here in Falmouth. Thank you, Julie Cadigan and Don Lincoln, for all the support you provide to the veterans and their families. And finally, thank you for watching. I've been blown away by how many of you have come to observe Memorial Day and Veterans Day regardless of the weather, rain or shine. And it doesn't feel right without having you here. We miss you, we wish you the very best in health and safety, and we look forward to hopefully seeing you soon. It wasn't the same without you. This concludes today's ceremony. Thank you for joining us for Falmouth's 2020 observance of Memorial Day, and we look forward to seeing you again soon. As we sign off, the Greater Falmouth Community Chorus will perform a service medley. Thank you. All right. Good job, everybody. Thank you.
Rear echelon, close gap. Close guard. Forward.